Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the RCI GDAS webinar. It is titled Financial Capacity, the New Framework for Protecting People with Dementia from Financial Exploitation. It is presented today by Ms. Jenny Helms from the Alzheimer's Association in Atlanta, Georgia. Before we get started, let's cover a few conference details. If you have a question during the conference, we ask that you type in your question. All questions will be answered at the end of the conference. Also, if you are at your own computer station, a post-test survey will pop up at the end of this webinar. There will be 10 questions about the webinar and some personal information questions such as your name and email address that will enable me to send you your certificate. If you are not at your own computer, copy down the link that is posted on the last slide of this presentation. Use the link at your own computer to complete the post-test. Certificates will be sent within 1 week after the closing of the test. Please complete the test by March the 22nd to receive your certificate. We are now ready to begin. Good morning, Jenny.
Good morning, Elaine. And good morning to all of you.
Thank you.
You ready?
We are.
Okay, super. Well, first off, I'd like to say thank you all to you for joining in, because I think this is a very important issue that will take us all working together in order to really help people with dementia who are potential victims of financial exploitation. And the reason that the Alzheimer's Association got involved is that we were hearing more and more cases of financial exploitation. The interesting thing is that a lot of times we would hear it in passing, or we would hear it while we were out in the community, and very rarely did people come in specifically about this. So we realized it was an issue that we needed to get educated about and to put some systems in place to deal with. And we approached the Division of Aging, Cliff Burt, about pursuing a grant with the Administration on Aging, and we were able to get a grant. So as part of that, we have developed this program and some other things that we'll discuss today. But I want to say first, I'm very grateful to the Division of Aging for their vision in this area, and I'm grateful to the Administration on Aging as well. And I do think that there are some interesting programs going on in other states, but in talking to different people, like the president of the Adult Protective Services Association in D.C. last year, she indicated that a lot more work needed to be done on that area. So I do think that Georgia has an opportunity to make a big difference, and to make a difference both on the state level and on the national level. So I'm glad that you all will be part of that. Today, a good bit of my presentation comes from two of the different publications of Generations magazine, and you'll see where I've said what issues they are. If you all feel like it, I highly recommend that you get these two editions and read the entire magazines that were devoted to this. I think that they did a phenomenal job, and we are very grateful for that. Let's talk briefly about what the learning objectives are for today. Let me see, whoops, let me go back. And that is, when you finish this, you should know the risk factors for financial exploitation among older adults, know the barriers for reporting financial exploitation, understand the implications of cognitive functioning in determining financial capacity, know warning signs of diminished financial capacity, know about screens for determining financial capacity, and know things that you can do to help address financial capacity. So let's start off with what the definition is for financial abuse. And it is defined in Generations as first off, it's the fastest growing form of exploitation, and it is defined as the illegal or improper use of an elder's funds, property, or assets. It involves the theft or fraudulent use of an older adult's money or material belongings, and the use of undue influence to relinquish or gain legal authority over assets. And in a minute, we'll talk a little bit more about undue influence. But I think it's a very crucial term to know, because I do think that this is one of the underlying issues of financial exploitation. But first, let me tell you about a real-life scenario. A widowed woman lives in her home. Her adult son lives with her and has spent almost $200,000 of her money on things for himself, including trips to Vegas and a new car for his girlfriend. Her brother finally steps in and addresses the situation. That's a real story. $200,000. That's a big number, isn't it? Okay. So undue influence is typically accomplished by employing subtle pressures to deceptively gain control over a weaker person's decision making. And within families, that might be something like blackmail strategies such as threats of violence or suicide, and pilfering money is one of the most common forms of undue influence. And then there's begging for limited assistance with bill paying and shopping needs. And we're seeing that these really even occur in very wealthy families. We're hearing that wealthy families, for example, in metropolitan Atlanta, are cutting down on using in-home agencies because the adult children who have lost their jobs are needing more money with assistance for bill paying and things like that. And so the elders are actually somewhat neglecting their own needs in order to give these dollars. Also, there's the spending of the elders' money. We see this happening more when a second person's name is on the checkbook or on the different accounts. And making poor financial decisions, and that might be anything from making big purchases, or it might be doing a lot of different things for those get-rich schemes, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But within families, too, it might be withholding of copies of documents, and that could be anything from deeds or different things like that once a person has the ability to access that. And forging or forcing signatures. We're not hearing a lot about forging or forcing signatures. We're hearing more of helps himself to the bank account, starts out writing small checks for him or herself, and then escalates it as it seems to be working. So financial abuse, unlike other forms of elder abuse, is largely private. So a lot of times you're not even going to be hearing this because it's occurring in the context of close relationships. And that might be the son or the daughter that's looking out for them. It might be sometimes the granddaughter that has been close to the grandmother all these years, and little by little she helps herself more. But here's a significant number. Listen to this. 55% of all this abuse occurs within families. That's a significant number, 55%. So let's talk about what are the risk factors. And obviously there'll be other folks who don't fit in these categories, but according to Generations magazine, elder victims are typically white, widowed females, and that's because they don't have someone, the widowed, overlooking them. And, you know, like it could be that the husband would have kept that granddaughter in check, but now when the woman is alone, there's no one to kind of look out for her when this happens in silence. They're typically between the ages of 70 to 89, and the other risk factors include being cognitively impaired and having social or geographical isolation. If it's harder and harder for this person to get out, it's easier for that adult son to help himself to her money because other people aren't going to know about it. And another risk factor is an increased need for assistance with daily activities, recent life changes such as widowhood or divorce. And what that's all about is this person feels like they're in greater need, and so they put up with these types of things in order to get the assistance that they need. And so when we're talking about financial abuse in the family, family members are a ripe context for financial abuse given the unique array of obligatory norms in caring for each other. And that might be that the daughter's spending more and more time taking mom to doctor's visits, and so the mother feels obligated. And there's often a sense that the family member or the exploitive person is due what is taken from the elder. So that could be the daughter feels like, you know, I take mom to all these things. I look after mom more than anybody else does. I lost my job. I need some help. What's the sweat? So the elder may eventually become aware of the abuse, but often refrains from informing other family members in order to protect the exploitive person or for fear of losing daily living support. In the case where the son went through $200,000, this person, the mother, was put into assisted living where she was made healthy. And when it was looked at what happened here, what really went on, it turned out to be that the mother had always spoiled this son. And so she kind of knew that something was going on but was in denial about it until the family eventually stepped in and addressed the situation. And typically the process doesn't end until the older adult dies or all assets are depleted. And what we see there is it's a slippery slope. When a person helps himself to some of the money, then they feel that it worked well and they continue to do so. And that's why we see that pattern. So what do we do about financial exploitation? The first step is the recognition that the elder financial abuse has occurred. A step met with a host of complications and intense feelings, particularly between the elder and the exploitive person. So let's talk about that and what's going on. The reason that these elders often don't want to report the financial abuse is fear of retaliation, that son might hurt them. We had one case where the 80-year-old father was very scared of his son, and he actually cried about it. So, and there's also the fear of loss of independence. If I don't let him do this, he's just going to put me in a nursing home. Feelings of self-blame. I probably shouldn't let him have done that. And then also increased dependency on the abuser. He or she's the one who takes her to the store or to church or the places that she needs to go. And then feeling sympathetic and protective of the exploitive person. That's a lot of times family dynamics. And with Alzheimer's, we're seeing more and more of the difficult cases that we deal with is about the family dynamics. And I think that that's what we're seeing with this as well. The other barriers are that the elder may hesitate if there's a rescue pattern that exists. And it could be, for example, a person that they've helped them out all through the years, and so this is nothing new. It's just gotten worse. Or if there's a history of alcohol and drug problems. In that case, again, it would be the family member was used to seeing different types of these events happen throughout the person's life, where the person maybe lost a job or had money problems and came to them and they would bail them out. But then once that family member, the elder, gets more vulnerable, those hits can be harder to them in terms of how much money is asked. And also if there's a history of mental illness, and again that would be that there was a pattern of the person having problems and turning to the elder through the years, and again it would escalate. So who can help report financial abuse? I think it really takes professionals, and the professionals that they recognize are attorneys, physicians, financial institutions, therapists, case managers, adult protective services. I do think, though, however, that this group needs to be expanded. It needs to be the entire aging network. I think that it will take a bigger net, so to speak, to help find these cases and to help these families. So one of the big steps is determining if cognitive function is a problem regarding financial abuse. So we need to determine if it is a problem. And if cognition is intact, professionals work towards empowering the individual to unhook from the victim behavior. In this one case where this man was afraid of his adult son, a counselor at his church actually helped him come up with a plan. They helped him plan to sell his home and to put a down payment on a retirement home, and to help his son find an apartment. And so in this case, he actually subsidized him to an extent. But in doing so, it cut down on the huge amount of money he was having to give him regularly, and it cut down on the verbal abuse that he was experiencing. So interventions such as psychoeducation, psychotherapy, or skills training can help the elder identify ambivalence related to the codependent nature of the relationship and implementing safety and survival strategies. And I do think that it does take a skilled counselor in order to do that, and that's an area that we all need to focus on, making sure that we can direct folks to those counselors. And you can see the scenario down at the bottom is what I pretty much just described. And the good news is that I think that man is back on track now. And he used to cry off and on because he didn't know how to deal with it before that counselor helped him. And sometimes the legal action may be appropriate. When the elder suffers from cognitive impairment or the sum of money involved is large, legal action must occur. And it needs to occur quickly. In this one instance where the adult son helped himself to $200,000, the family did bring in an elder law attorney, and I actually met with them. And in this case, I said to the attorney, do we need to get immediate guardianship to keep him from going through any more of his mother's money? And the elder law attorney said, no, we don't need to do that. His name has been taken off all of the accounts. The very next day, her Social Security check came in the mail, and he opened a new account and cashed it. So these are just the little subtleties that we have to be familiar with so that we can guide folks on actions that they need to take. Adult Protective Services may be involved in investigating as well as in shifting financial responsibility to a third party. And I think that we have worked very closely with Adult Protective Services on this grant, and we are absolutely pleased and delighted at the support that they have given to this effort. I want to commend all of the folks at the Adult Protective Services Department and also the Division of Aging for their vision on this. And then in situations where criminal activity is suspected, local police authorities should be contacted to begin an investigation. And I don't know how many of you all are aware of this, but Pat King and David Blake down at the Division of Aging run a forensic unit for DAS, and they look at financial abuse and exploitation, and they help train police and law enforcement on it. Pat has forged a wonderful relationship with Vernon Keene, the head of the GBI, and has brought this to his attention. She's done training, they've done training all across the state, and they're really making a big difference. And now police officers are more aware of it and know what they can do. Also, a couple of years ago, we passed a law that made it a felony to abuse or neglect or exploit a person with dementia. That we expanded it from persons over 65, and that was partially in case some of them were under the age of 65 who had dementia. And this year we're moving that law into the proper code section of the law. It wasn't in the proper code section. And this will make it more available to police officers to pursue this. And our office is in the building where the Dunwoody Police are located, and they tell us that they are seeing more and more of these cases. And in one recent case, they sent me an email about a man who had exploited someone, and he got a 10-year sentence and is having to pay back the money. Nationwide, the laws vary on this, but we're starting to see more of them, and there are policy recommendations to have stiffer penalties for this type of thing. But before we get to that point, it's going to take all of us to recognize when it is going on so that we can get the folks both to APS and to the law enforcement. So when we're looking at financial capacity, the question becomes, does a person have financial capacity? And that is the capacity to manage one's financial affairs. And Daniel Marson, who you see is quoted down there, has done some great work on this. He's kind of considered the nation's expert on financial capacity. He's over at the University of Alabama. He's a neuropsychologist and an attorney. He's done work in this area for about 30 years, and now he was the editor of one of these Generations magazines, and we also hired him to do some work with us that I'll explain in a minute. But you can see that he defines financial capacity as a term that he thinks this is a very important term that all of us needs to know. And so we need to know if the person has the financial capacity or the capacity to manage their own financial affairs. And it comprises a broad range of conceptual, pragmatic, and judgment abilities. And that would include having basic monetary skills, for example, ability to count out change or dollars, the ability to carry out cash transactions to pay for a purchase, the ability to manage a checkbook and a bank statement. And with that said, not all of us are great at reconciling our bank statements. So if we were always bad and we're bad when we're older, it's not as big of a concern. It's when there's a big change in it. And then exercise in financial judgment, and that might be whether to give away their money, whether to take on risky investments, and that type of thing. So older adults are most vulnerable to impairment and loss of financial skills and capacity, not only because of the effects of Alzheimer's and other related dementias, but also due to not normal cognitive aging, according to Daniel Marson and Charles Sabatino. And that is, sometimes we see that people have, when in graduate school in gerontology they talked about marginalization, and they said that people kind of stepped to the side and made room for younger folks as they aged. I don't think that that's quite it. I think people really stop doing things when it's overwhelming to them, either due to physical problems or cognitive problems. And so a case such as this might be an older adult who doesn't get around quite as well as they did, and they've been thinking about maybe doing a little bit better job with their stocks. And then somebody knocks on their door and says, you know, I'd like to manage your stocks, and you know, this is what I do. And the elder, because it's too overwhelming to investigate the best options, might just agree to go with that person who may or may not have their best interests at heart. The capacity to manage one's financial affairs, known as financial capacity, like we mentioned, comprises a broad range of conceptual, pragmatic, and judgment abilities used across a range of everyday settings that are critical to the independent functioning of adults in our society. And that might be different things too, such as deciding to give away some sums of money to their daughter when they don't know the rules of like 5-year look back or anything like that, and so they might not be on top of their game. And then financial capacity has been defined in general terms as the capacity to manage money and financial assets in a way that meets a person's needs and which are consistent with his/her values and self-interest. And one of the things that we really do need to think about is that those dollars are needed for their care, and so we need to make sure that those dollars stay available to the elder. And so experts are now saying that it's important for professionals to be trained so that they can determine financial capacity. And experts know that financial capacity is one of the first abilities to decline as cognitive impairment and early dementia encroach. So what they're actually saying is that you could see someone giving away their money, making bad financial decisions, falling for those Nigeria scams, etc., before a diagnosis of Alzheimer's is ever made. And that's important for us all to remember. That needs to be like one of those things that we keep in the back of our minds. And declines in money management skills appear to occur in the clinical disease process and may even precede a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, like I just mentioned. In one case, we had this lady that who was 51, diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and the way she figured out that she had a problem was she was fired from 3 different jobs. She was able to do her job selling furniture in these major places, major stores that sell furniture, but she couldn't do the paperwork, the contracts. Well, you can imagine that someone like that probably can't manage their money skills either. And individuals with amnestic, which is just primarily memory problems, mild cognitive impairment, in which many cases it's a prodromal or what's called prodromal, which is prior to having symptoms that lead to a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, are at high risk for declining abilities in complex skills such as checkbook and bank statement management. And I think that's why we start to see things where the person's bills have piled up and that kind of thing early in the process. And people with diminished capacity may also be at risk for abuse and financial exploitation, including financial exploitation, including consumer fraud and other financial scams. I could tell you that a couple weeks ago we were down at the legislature, and Representative Alan Peake said that his mother kept giving money to these different types of things, and the more she gave, the more it escalated, that she would get hit more and more for money things over both the phone and the internet. And we do see that this is one of those big red flag areas that we all need to be aware of, because this is going to be happening more and more. And it could be the things like the magazine sales and different things like that. And a classic sign that there may be a problem is with judgment is a new interest in get-rich-quick schemes. And that's when that person goes for all of those different schemes that promise a good payback. So here are some warning signs that I'd love for everybody to tuck away in your memory as warning signs of diminished financial capacity. And that is forgetting to pay bills, paying the same bills several times, misplacement of financial and other documents at home, missing tax and other deadlines, declines in checkbook management skills, problems with math skills like making change, loss of general knowledge regarding financial terms like mortgage, impaired judgment about financial investments, and use of money, including interest in get-rich schemes, and unfounded anxiety about the nature and extent of one's personal wealth. And just like now doctors are using a mini-cog exam for people that are over 65, and that mini-cog, what that looks like is they'll ask them to remember 3 words, and it might be like apple, table, penny. And then they will talk to them some more, and after a while ask them those 3 words. And if they are able to give those 3 words, then that's a good sign. They also ask them to do the clock drawing test, where they ask them to draw the circle, which is the clock, and then to put the numbers on it, and then to set the hands at 10 minutes after 11. And if the person can't do that, then they're going to suggest that they go in for further testing. That doesn't say they have Alzheimer's or dementia. It indicates that there's a problem and that they need further testing. And so a lot of times when you all are dealing with these folks, you may not initially hear these different signs like problems paying the bills or problems with the checkbook, but you might recognize some of the other 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's, and those could give you a clue for knowing that that person may be inclined to have problems with finances, and that we might be wanting to look into that. And a lot of times if there is a family member or a emergency contact, then sometimes that person is overlooking them and we're not as worried. I will say that I think a lot of folks who live alone are at risk, and we need to be paying attention to that. So some of the warning signs of Alzheimer's that you might think about, and this is not on the slide, and if any of you all want our brochures that say it, we could send it to you. But the different 10 are memory loss that disrupts daily life, challenges in planning or solving problems, difficulty completing familiar tasks, confusion with time or place, trouble understanding visual images in spatial relationships, new problems with words in speaking or writing, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps, decreased or poor judgment, withdrawal from work or social activities, changes in mood and personality. So if you saw those, just tuck it in the back of your mind that this person may have problems with financial capacity. And it's important to know the person's baseline. If they were good at managing the checkbook before, but the checkbook is a mess now, then there's a problem. And like I mentioned before, if they weren't good at it before, we're not as concerned now. And when we spoke with the woman who was the president of the Adult Protective Services Association in D.C. last year, she talked about the fact that there are no standard screens for determining if a person has financial capacity. And at that point, we were able to say that thanks to the grant through the Division of Aging Services and the Administration on Aging, we were able to hire Daniel Marson to develop 2 screens. And the reason that we need screens is that because people with mild cognitive impairment and early stage dementia have social skills, they'll make it very hard for you to know that they have diminished financial capacity. You'll be talking with someone, they're well dressed, they are very socially engaging, and you won't have a clue that there's something going on. So when there's an indication that of any of the warning signs of diminished financial capacity, then the person needs to be assessed to determine if they do have financial capacity or they need some help with what their finances are looking like, you know. So Dr. Marson, who is one of the nation's experts on financial capacity, and his team developed 2 screens for us to be used by the Georgia Adult Protective Services and law enforcement. And we're very excited about that. We've done a couple of different phases with them. The first step was they developed these 2 different tools, and then we worked with them to go back and forth and hone these tools. One tool is to assess the person who is the elder, and the other one is to interview a referral source or a family member who can kind of give you an idea of what is going on. So let's talk about those 2 screens. The UAB Brief Financial Capacity Screen, with this one screen you get information about the client and referral information on the client's presenting financial issue problem. And what that looks like, sometimes it might be a daughter calls you and says, you know, I really think that my brother is going through my mother's assets. And so she might be the person that is your referral source that you interview to get information on what's going on. You also interview that person to find out what the client's prior level of financial functioning is. That again is looking at the baseline and seeing, in their opinion, if there are any declines. And then you report your opinion on the client's financial skills based on a separate test that they take, and I'll get to that in a minute. But that's actually done on this screen. And you'll report the current financial skills of that client as well. Then you would rate your client's financial judgments and give your opinion on their vulnerability to scams and financial exploitations, as well as your opinion on the client's financial skills that have declined, and your opinion on if they are able to live successfully and manage it themselves, and your opinion on the client's ability to manage all of their financial affairs. And sometimes that might look like, well, she's okay with paying her monthly bills, you know, she should have her checkbook for that, but she might have someone else look over her savings and things like that to make sure that nobody's helping themselves, another family member, etc. And so you'll end up making recommendations of the ways that you can enhance the client's financial capacity, and then make an overall recommendation and action plan. It could be that you're recommending that the person have a guardian, or more likely a power of attorney, or the different things such as that, maybe a conservatorship, but you would make the recommendations and help the family plan for who could best look out for that client. And then on the other screen, this is the one that screens the elder. And so you would actually gather information from the client that will help you determine their ability to count money and make change. So one of these examples is putting some money in front of them and then have them count out and give you, for example, $1.41. Another one is asking them, for example, how many quarters are there in $7.50? There are different things such as that, and getting them to show you whether or not they can subtract figures for managing a checkbook, and getting them to define different words such as debt. And it's interesting that you can see patterns when they do this, that if they don't know, they'll either say they don't know, or they'll make up something that sounds like they're just going around the question that you asked and not really answering it. And so based on the different questions that you ask the client, you would come up with your opinion of the client's current financial judgments and your opinion on the client's current vulnerability to scams and financial exploitation. The reason for these tools are just to give you a clearer framework where you're not just having to guess about it, but to tell you the different things to look at, and when you look at it clearly, you can see patterns. So what can you do to help with financial exploitation? You can educate your staff to recognize the signs of financial exploitation and possible diminished value. And you can help increase awareness and educate the community on these issues. And that would even be, too, to let them know that there is help with things like adult protective services and other services that can help them. And also, I think it's important for you to be able to make referrals to elder law attorneys who specialize in these types of situations. And we want to help families know the different things, like conservatorship and is probably considered a last resort, that above all, we want to have some family member looking after them and monitoring what's going on, and then stepping in quickly when needed, and also for them to know where they can turn if it comes to that. So we want you to help increase awareness and educate the community on these issues, and we would hope that the different organizations and agencies would develop a protocol for helping families and individuals who might be facing financial exploitation and diminished financial capacity. And again, that would be including when someone should be referred to an elder law attorney, when to refer them to APS, and also when to seek out the help of the other experts like Pat King, when to involve the law enforcement who may be able to freeze accounts, and that's important for when that needs to happen quickly, and when to involve ombudsman if it happens in long-term care. And we think that if we're going to significantly address financial exploitation, that we need awareness, education, protocol, and policies regarding financial exploitation for financial institutions. And we're told that, you know, for things like where they're selling stocks or that type of things, that there are some systems in place, but in 30% of the time when they've had questions about a person's financial capacity, they're still making the sales, and so that shows we have some work to go on. We still need more awareness and education for law enforcement, and Pat King is working on that, and if there are any of you all that would like to be trained to be training with her and with David Blake, you might contact her. We need more education with attorneys and with the adult protective staff nationwide, and I again commend the Georgia APS staff for engaging in this. We also need the awareness and education in the whole aging network, because it will take us all, and healthcare and long-term care and other industries, because they serve a lot of these folks, and then the faith-based communities. We probably need better laws against financial exploitation. with severe monetary penalties, in my humble opinion. And we will be working with Alan Peake to do that. But in the meantime, we will be gathering more and more information about the types of cases that are out there so that we can see what type of protections are needed. I do think that one of the most difficult things is that a lot of this happens over the Internet, and it's very hard to control what goes on the Internet. But we will continue to work on that, and we will be working with the police to get these stories. But if you all have stories where they've worked on or situations where you think we need better laws, we would definitely entertain hearing from you and working with you, and would greatly appreciate it. So now I want to see if we have any questions.
Everyone type in your questions if you have anything. Thank you very much, Jenny. We do appreciate it. This is a very important topic. And I guess I kind of have a question. I know today we're addressing the professionals in our state, but let's say, for instance, I am just a neighbor to someone that I believe is being taken advantage of. Where do you suggest I turn? Because, you know, you don't necessarily want to go to the police, but at the same time you do.
Right. Well, if you know of a family member that could help out, I would say start with the family member, and then I would also turn to Adult Protective Services.
Okay. Okay. Because, I mean, you know, many times our loved ones' neighbors have been their neighbors for, 30, 40 years, and sometimes know them better than family members. So, okay, we do have a question here. Do you know what the code section is? I don't know that I understand that question.
If you're talking about the law that makes it a felony to abuse, neglect, or exploit a person with Alzheimer's, it's getting moved, and I don't know what the code is, but we could get that for you, what the code section is.
Okay.
And that's currently in the legislature right now. In fact, there's a hearing on it today.
Jenny, if you don't mind, can you give everyone your email address?
Sure.
And they can shoot you any other questions that they may have later.
Sure. It's GINNY.HELMS@ALZ.org.
Okay.
I would like to know if anybody is addressing this in their agency now, if people have protocol that they're doing. Maybe they could type in and say, yes, we do, no, we don't, that type of thing.
Okay. Can anybody help Jenny on that? I know it's kind of sad to think that you work your entire life, trying to take care of yourself in your olden days, and someone comes in and takes advantage of you.
Right. And we've heard it say sometimes that that's folly and everybody has their right to a folly, but then that means that their money isn't there to take care of them, and that's the main thing that we're looking out for. It's not that, we want to be these huge crusaders. Right. It's that we want the money to be there for the elder when they need it.
That's right. That is right. All right. We're still looking for some answers to Jenny's question, and also if you have any additional questions, because this is a very important topic. It can affect people in our own families. Okay. All right. I guess the cat must have everybody's fingers tied.
Right. And just so everybody knows, they're welcome to take my PowerPoint and use that in your own agency for training. We are happy to share it.
Okay. We will have it on archive hopefully Monday. Laura will be coming back from a conference she's in now, and she's the one that downloads this for us. So it will be online again Monday if anyone would like to view it again or share it with your group. All right, it doesn't seem that we're going to have any other comments or questions. So at this time, I'm going to stop the recording.
Thank you. Please stand by.